What's up, guys? This is Carter Thomas with Coin Mastery TV. Make sure you go to coinmastery.com/KuCoin. Get your exchange account on KuCoin. That is the exchange. That's the hot exchange right now. And I say that because the more that this stuff gets crazy, the more this market starts to heat up, the more you just got to have an account on all these places so that you can capitalize on some of the big winners. And I think that that's just one of the truths of the matter. And, opportunity knocks, you got to open the door. So today we're talking a little bit about what happened with the entire market last night as it relates to South Korea and some fake news or misinterpreted news, I should say, that went out. We're going to talk about what that happened to the overall price. But really, I want to talk about the state of crypto and what the opportunities are as it relates to some of these macro forces. Talk a little bit about some of the real world conversations and use cases that's happening and all that good stuff. So just get that organized there. We're looking at Bitcoin. You can see I took away the trend line because that trend line really just ate it on that, the one we were looking at. So we really broke through that. And now it's a matter of whether this is an accumulation phase, whether it's a correction phase, or whether we're going back parabolic. There are some charts that you can put together, right, that are more parabolic, where you can connect a lot of these bottom valleys together to get a parabolic channel, right? It almost looks like a crescent moon. I didn't do that on this because I find that sometimes those charts you draw to try to make it look like what you want it to look like instead of actually looking at what the chart is and then taking it, extrapolating from that. So I'm just looking at the Fibonacci, which is really not the ultimate by any means way of looking at this, but really I just want to find out what levels should I keep my eye on in order to determine whether we're going sideways, whether we're going up, whether we're going down. I'm on the daily candle. You can see we had a pretty solid daily candle yesterday. We had a decent amount of volume, but not nearly as much as we had in the past. But it is still building. The daily candle is still evolving. We had a pretty big wick. A lot of that was driven by last night's bonanza from this South Korea news, which we'll talk about. But you can see it bounced right off that 50% line. And if we go into the 4-hour, you can see how that volume was where it happened. We got this, a hammer candle right here, which is it shows an inversion happening. Huge bear candle right there. So overall, nothing too crazy quite yet. I think we are still in a bit of an accumulation phase. And I'm just going to keep my eye on this for now. Nothing too crazy. I think that the bigger takeaway that I got from this, and this is coming from watching the charts mostly, but also just keeping an eye on Twitter, keeping an eye on Reddit, Telegram, Discord, Slack, whatever places you are hanging out to see, Facebook, real-time reactions of people. That's always important because I was telling people at an event I was at last weekend, I have, 2 big monitors. One monitor is for the market stuff, and the other monitor is honestly just for market sentiment. All I do is watch what people are talking about, how fast they're talking about, what's their excitement level. I don't really care about what coins they're talking about as much as what's their overall demeanor. What sort of actions are they taking based on how they feel? And what I really noticed last night, I'm sure many of you know by now, but there was a big rumor coming around that the police and the feds in South Korea raided a couple exchanges, and it was just like the end of the apocalypse was coming. And it turns out that that's not the case at all. In fact, that oftentimes these unannounced raids are relatively not normal, but it's not it's something that happens from time to time. And this news has been around for the past almost month now, right? I think it was December 12th that originally came out that they're not necessarily going to make exchanges illegal. They're just going to make sure that everything's being regulated, done by the book. This is exactly what happened in China. And it's I'm sure it's just what's going to happen in other countries as we move forward. The United States being the obvious next big one at some point, and we'll get to that in the next months, maybe years, who knows. But what was really interesting, and the reason why I think you guys should all care, is that as this news started to go viral on Twitter and other networks, the drop in volume, and let me zoom in here to a 30-minute just so you can see it. It was significant. I mean, this thing was dropping fast, and it was all based on this news article. And this is nothing we've seen or haven't seen before, but the dump was enormous about how fast people were willing to sell. And I saw it especially on a lot of these altcoins, a lot of the top altcoins that have had huge runs recently, the ones that have had the major moon action. And I think that that's very telling, in the sense that I think that the more we see these sort of articles and this sort of FUD come out, the more sensitive prices are to that FUD, the more precarious the price actually is. So, in other words, instead of looking at a price of a coin and saying like, oh, well, this is the established price, and it crashes off of some news, like with Ripple or any of these coins that in the past week have had big drawdowns, I think it's really helpful to think about, are they crashing from a new price, or are they just way over the actual price that they should be at? I tend to be in the camp of, I think things are overvalued for now. Doesn't mean you can't capitalize on that overvaluation, but I think that that's what the case is, where I look at everything and I don't look at things crashing. I think them trying to have price discovery. And so what this means for anyone out there, and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, is as you're looking through your coins, or as you're looking through your buying decisions or your selling decisions, most importantly, realize that the more the coin has already gone up a lot or will go up a lot, the more sensitive that price is going to be in this state of time, in this moment in time, probably for the next couple months, where the faster it runs up, the faster it can come down. And you just got to be prepared for that. Otherwise, you'll have the same reaction where you're like, oh my God, I got to get out. This doesn't feel right. And a lot of people, the nature of crypto is so fast that once it hits a certain price, if it stays at that price for more than 48 hours, we get used to it. The amount of dopamine we have in our brain settles back down to a normal level, and we want it back. We want that feeling back. And that causes very, very crazy behavior in these markets. So what that means for you is, as you are looking through this coin, now specifically like KuCoin, you're going to see a lot of this. Binance is crazy right now. If you didn't hear, Binance signed up 240,000 people, almost 250,000 people in 1 hour. And they've had to close their account down like every day to upgrade to try to be able to accommodate all of these new people. If you don't have an account on Binance, I believe they're allowing people to sign up again, coinmastery.com/Binance. Get an account on Binance and get an account on KuCoin, because Binance is where the volume is. It's that's where you're going to get like the major movements, but KuCoin is still up and coming, and you're going to see a lot of these new listings and a lot of the growth happening on KuCoin. That's why you got to be on both of these. So while I do think that if the iron is hot, you got to go after it, you also have to. Last night was a very, very good test of how would you feel if you saw prices really drop versus watching them always go up, because that price sensitivity, it's almost impossible to predict how you're going to feel unless you have unless you're dealing with an amount of money that you don't care about losing. That's why people always tell you to do that. So really good lesson in psychology, I think, last night. It's nothing new. This watching headlines and watching this stuff just get completely blown out of proportion. It's not. We've seen this millions of times. It can move $50-100 billion out of the market cap, which is just ridiculous. because people, whatever, but a lot of people are on edge. A lot of people are playing with money they don't have. A lot of people are buying stuff they don't understand they're buying. They're making money they've never made. That creates a very volatile and sensitive environment. So just make sure you know the game you're playing. If you're going to play that game, and if you want to play that game, go for it. Because drawdowns feel about 10 times worse than a doubling your money feels good, if that makes sense. And that's a very hard thing to swallow, especially when it seems like it's just going to go up forever. Cool. So we're just watching Bitcoin. Similar thing happened with Litecoin and with Ethereum. So nothing crazy. I think the big, I would say, macro piece of all of this that I'm seeing, and a lot of it relates to this type of demand. This 250,000 people in an hour. I mean, you think about Coinbase, they're doing, let's say, 100, 200,000 people a day, which is just insane already. But these guys are doing like millions of people a day if they wanted to. The blockchains cannot handle that kind of growth. There's very few blockchains. There are some blockchains that are trying to solve that, like Ryblox and IOTA are like theoretically trying to do that. They have not been proven. They have not been stress tested, so no one knows if they will. But that's going to be the big issue, right? So you look at Ethereum, like Etherscan isn't even up right now because the database went down, blah, blah, blah. So I'm looking at ethstats.net, and it can show you some of the pending transactions. I mean, look at all this gas pending. The amount of gas you need to use to actually put a transaction through is out of control right now. And the whole thing is it's crazy backed up. And this is not new. I mean, Ethereum's always had these kind of problems. It's very expensive to do these transactions. And when they try to run all on-chain transactions, that causes big problems, not for Ethereum, but for ERC20 tokens, for decentralized exchanges, for using wallets. All these kind of external problems start to come in, not just with Ethereum, but you see this with Bitcoin, you're going to see with Litecoin. And that is why things like Raiden, which is a scaling solution, or Plasma for Ethereum, are going to be a big deal. And also Lightning Network, potentially atomic swaps for Bitcoin and Litecoin and Viacoin and Vertcoin and all the other ones that you're using it. But I think that this trend of scaling is going to be a huge deal. And if we do type in Ethereum and we look at the Ethereum USD chart, you can see that as the network clogs up, it actually causes the price to go up on Ethereum, which is kind of ironic because there's so much usage. Now, what this means to you, I think that some people, especially in the VC investment world, would bet on Ethereum, and specifically they might bet on things like Raiden or something that can provide a scaling solution for a large blockchain that's having scaling problems. But what I would bet on as a pure speculative bet is different types of blockchains that in themselves have scaling solutions already built into them, so that as they grow, as they get bigger, they won't run into these same problems. And again, it's impossible to know what any of these blockchains are going to look like when things get big, because this growth, I think, is bigger than anyone ever expected. Ethereum was always really fast, for the past year and a half or so, as long as I've been using it. And it's just been, this year when things are just getting crazy, clogged up. So it's not just the solution, the scaling solutions for the big blockchains that are the big lucrative bets. It's also the new companies, the new blockchains, the new coins that potentially could scale. That's one of the reasons why I like Stellar a lot, because it has a different, faster mechanism. That's why I talked about Viacoin the other week. I don't know if these are going to solve the problems or do it well, but what I do know is that story theoretically solves a pain point for people who are spending money, right? Remember, like, one of the big trends of 2017, and I think it'll continue through 2018, is people buy stories, right? I would say that 75% of people don't really know what a majority of the coins they're buying actually do. Like, they know they know the headlines, right? And they've seen the website and they kind of get it, but they don't really know the inner workings of how it works. And that's okay. But that means you're buying a story, right? You're buying what has been presented to you. And the more that people feel the pain of having to spend this kind of money on gas or having to wait 3 hours for a Bitcoin transaction, the more that when a new coin comes up that promises faster and seamless transaction times, no matter what the scale, the more the average retail investor is going to say, hey, I'm going to buy some of that because I know that this is a real problem that needs to be solved. And that's just a good story. I mean, people will buy that story all day. And I'll let you guys do the research on what coins you think have that technology built in, but that's two ways to look at it. Scaling the existing networks, betting on new networks that promise scalability. Now, I think that this is also really funny, kind of ironic. Bitcoin, there's a big Bitcoin conference in Miami happening next week, and they had to stop accepting Bitcoin payments because of the transaction fees, because of the timing and all that. And so this is a small piece of the puzzle. I don't think there's anything wrong with this. This is just a pragmatic approach to what these guys are doing. But I think that this makes good headlines, which drives a lot of sentiment in the market, which then leads people to make decisions about what they should be buying. So scale, I think scale is a really big deal. And I think it's a really big deal, not only because that's what's going to help blockchain survive, but it's also a big deal because that's a really good story right now. And if you see coins that are up and coming on any of these exchanges and they're like, this is the ultimate scalability solution, that's a great pitch, especially if you're looking for small cap stuff. So I think I would definitely keep that in mind. Goldman Sachs came out, and on the heels of our good friend Jamie Dimon, Goldman Sachs is talking about how they actually do see crypto as a potential use in the currency format, right? Because the age-old debate for many people is, well, Bitcoin's not a currency and Litecoin's not, it's not going to work, blah, blah, blah. And I think we can all agree that we all get it, right? That story is a storage of wealth. Bitcoin Cash is trying to be a currency. Litecoin is trying to be a currency. Ethereum is trying to be the supercomputer of the world. We all get it. But what the interesting thing is that they're coming out and say that there is a potential use case for crypto, and that is in developing countries where there's low bandwidth, where fees are a really, really big deal, and where you can potentially create some sort of not inflationary mechanism, but you can keep the price relatively stable in some way, right? So there's no huge volatility in price because it's typically going to be a pretty small purchase. So you got to have a pretty small, you can't have too much volatility in that. So I think that's really interesting. Meaning, when you're starting to look at currencies, it may be, this is the reason I got into Stellar Lumens to begin with, is because of this, like not only the banking, but because of the implications to third world countries. But Goldman Sachs is starting to come out and say that this may be a very useful way for currencies to be applied. And what I think this really means, and this is something that I've talked about, but I really think this is something that just takes a little bit of thinking in a new format. There's an age-old saying in marketing, and there's riches in the niches. Meaning, if you try to be everything to everyone, it's very hard to make a lot of money. If you really cater to a very specific group, you can make a lot of money. And that's often, counterintuitive for people that have never been in marketing or sales. What I mean by that is, you may look at something like, it's going to be a currency platform for, let's say, Namibia. I took a trip to Namibia. It was great, wonderful country. Be a currency for Namibia or whatever, or Sub-Saharan Africa. And as an investor, as somebody who's looking at these markets all day, you're like, that's tiny. How could that ever be huge? How could that ever make a lot of money? Or similarly, like what Zcoin's doing with, hey, we want to be a privacy coin, but they're really focusing on Southeast Asia, or Omise Go, right? OMG. Same idea. The more you focus on the niches, the more you will see coins that do really well over the long term. Will they be the moon coins? I don't know. But they will have a very clear use case that caters to a very specific audience of people. I think offshore banking is a very, very good niche that's actually enormous. But when you're thinking about coins to buy, especially when you're thinking about coins to buy for the long term, when you're not thinking about like, oh, what's going to go up 8,000% tomorrow, this is the way you got to think about it like a marketer. There's riches in the niches. What is a super specific problem that this coin is solving? More importantly, who is this problem? Who are the people that are getting this problem solved? Like, who are the actual people? What types of phones do they have? Where do they live? What are their real problems every single day? That's how you're going to be able to pick winners. That's how the products are really going to do well. And I think that that's something that I would encourage everybody to begin to think about, is that small niches can actually make you a lot of money. And it's something that if you're just getting into that type of thinking, it's counterintuitive. You want to be the Neo of China, or the Ethereum of China. You want to have the $10 trillion market, when in reality you need like a $200 billion market. You just need to own that, and you can win huge. Cool. Lastly, World Crypto Economic Forum. This is in San Francisco on Monday, and I'm going to go to this. These guys gave me a ticket, and they also gave me a link if anybody else wants to go. I get a commission on the ticket if you decide to go. You go to coinmastery.com/WCEF and buy through my link if you want, or just go, buy one. I think it's a couple $100. But I'm going to go here. I'm trying to get down to, I think my logo's on here somewhere. There we go, Coin Mastery. What's up? Yeah. And so my goal, I'm going to go here, and I'm interested in hearing a lot of talks, but I'm really just going here because I want to meet new projects. I want to find new investment opportunities. Hopefully I can meet some people that are doing ICOs. I want to really find out about exchanges, maybe hopefully meet crypto influencers or whatever else it may be. Be inspired, but just meet cool people. It's on Monday and Tuesday of next week. So if you want to go, it's in San Francisco. You should go. Some pretty awesome heavy hitters who are going to be there. From what I believe. Coinmastery.com. Let's just type that in. Coinmastery.com /WCEF. And we'll get you some tickets. So with that, we'll wrap it up from there. Always a pleasure to be here with you guys, as always. And I'll see you later. Peace out.